Welcome to the Business of Story, where we connect you with the leading minds in the art of business storytelling. Learn from best-selling authors, Hollywood screenwriters, makers, content marketers, and brand raconteurs on how to craft and tell compelling stories that sell. The Business of Story is brought to you by Emma, which provides innovative email marketing tools and services that drive brilliant results. And by Convince and Convert, digital marketing advisors and counselors to leading brands and organizations worldwide. Convince and Convert helps you gain and keep your customers online. Here's your host, Park Howell.
Hey everyone, welcome back to Business of Story. My name is Park Howell, as you probably know after 60 episodes, and I'm really excited about this show because I get to bring on one of my favorite people in all the world. And I can say that because I grew up with this guy. He's an amazing storyteller. We have had some incredible adventures, and some of them we can't even talk about on air because I'm not sure that the lawsuits have been settled yet. Just kidding on that. But he and I were chatting the other day. And one of the things I'd mentioned, had been listening to the show, and I said, one of the things that our audiences sometimes have a challenge with is finding the right story to use, either in growing their business or growing their clients' businesses. And a number of our artists, our guests on the show have talked about, we have stories everywhere. We just need to make an archive of it. My friend Mike, who said at the time, he goes, all of my stories really come back from my friendships and my childhoods. And I think about when I'm selling the product that I sell, I often go back to my childhood and think of really the funny anecdotes, the stories, the adventures that we achieved, and then apply those in business. And I said, Mike, that is a wonderful subject for Business of Story. So immediately invited him on, and I am so excited to have with us today my friend Mike Martin. He is the head of sales for Brokk, and we'll talk about Brokk in a little bit, but just to give you an idea, it is the world's largest seller of remote control demolition equipment. And the way Mike got into this business is pretty amazing in its own right, of how he went to the Swedish manufacturer of these remote control demolition equipment, got them to come to a little remote town outside of Seattle called Monroe, Washington, where he then headed up their North American sales, and this is 25 years ago, and then grew this business into what it is today. And it's really a phenomenal story, and it all comes back to a guy that has tremendous appreciation for family, for friends, and uses the stories that we have generated and created together to help advance his mission in life, and that is to help these people, these contractors out there, build really rigorous, incredible businesses using this line of remote control demolition equipment. So kind of an odd subject matter for Business of Story, but really powerful because what you can learn from Mike today, you can apply in your own professional pursuits and with your clients. So without further ado, let me welcome to the show, and I hope you will welcome him to my good pal, Mike Martin. Welcome, Mike.
Hey, thanks, Park. That was the best introduction I've ever had in my life, I think, for sure.
I didn't even write it. That just came from my heart, dude.
I could tell, buddy. I love you.
I love you, too. And by the way, I am going to be referring to this guy as Smoke from time to time because that's really what we always knew him growing up. And it's not Smoke for the reasons why you might think it is. Smoke, tell us how you got your name, Smoke.
That was pretty simple. I moved up to your neck of the woods there when I was about 15 and didn't have any friends other than a few neighborhood kids. And one of them was kind of the gang leader up there, big guy named Jay Snyder. And I happened to be playing a pool game at the clubhouse that we were living at, and I was leaning up against a poster of Smokey the Bear. He looked at me and looked at Smokey and said, "Your eyes are as big as that bear's. Your nickname now is Smokey." And eventually it went to high school, got abbreviated to Smoke. And I probably went almost 12 months with that nickname before somebody actually realized my name was Mike Martin. So that moniker stayed with me forever. And it's a great it's a great way to be recognized. I don't use it in business. I should. I have a couple guys that call me that, but nicknames are actually something that you can take away and remember. And it's one thing I haven't incorporated, but maybe one of these days I might put my Smoke name on my business card.
Yeah, well, I think you ought to, but it's something that, of course, we know you by, and I know I call you Smoke way more than I call you Mike. So it's
Yes.
tell us the story. Now, you and I, okay, so we really got acquainted in high school. Like you said, you grew up in a really tough part of Seattle. You were in the inner city schools, and you then moved out to the north end of Lake Washington. At the time, it's all built up now, but at the time, we were pretty rural. I mean, we lived out in the woods, went to Bothell High School, grew up. If any of you have been to the Seattle area, I grew up just above where St. Michel Winery is now, but back then it was a dairy. And then Mike grew up just across the valley from me, across the Sammamish Valley. So we were out trudging around the woods in the mud and the muck, just really having a ball. And you, out of all of our friends, had a lot of different jobs, but all of these jobs added up to where you are today, heading up this North American sales for Brokk. Can you share with our listeners the one story that I keep thinking about when you were downtown Seattle, and I think you were in high school, maybe just have graduated, and you were hauling a whole bunch of sheets of something, aluminum, metal, whatever, and they went flying off your truck, and what happened next?
Oh, it was beautiful. I used to be a delivery person. One of our good friends, Rick Painter, was going off to college, and kind of to preface the story, I never went to college. You guys were the ones that were achieving greatness, and I was bouncing around from one job to another trying to find my niche. I knew I didn't need to go to college. I was a small business kind of guy. I wanted to get into a small company, and I could make a difference so I could get noticed. It was like getting on a team that was maybe amateurish, where you could actually make a difference, as opposed to a large company that obviously had structure. But anyways, I was a truck driver delivering, and I was the best truck driver, Park, that they ever had.
Of course.
The owner of the company said there's two people that are important: your receptionist, because that's their first impression, and that delivery person when they drop the product off. If you can get those two impressions, they'll remember the company. Obviously, your product needs to be of quality, but as far as personality, and I took that to heart. So I was the best truck driver they ever had. I mean, I would drive around and unload all this material. We were a metal fabrication company. I love fabricating. I love working with metal, aluminum, and steel. That's what I'm doing now. And I was driving down Spokane Avenue, at First Avenue in Spokane, which is one of the more busiest industrial part of Seattle, right by, just near the Seahawk and Mariner baseball field. Mm-hmm. And I took a very hard turn because the light was turning yellow, and I went through the yellow light, took a hard turn, and I had probably 100 stacks of quarter-inch thick plate steel that had just been processed, and the bands on this pallet broke, and they all slid off onto the road. And this was a very busy arterial. I mean, it's coming and going. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon. And I can remember getting out of the truck, looking at this mess, scattered all over, and everybody came to a stop, and they were all looking at me saying, "Well, what are you going to do now, dummy?" And I looked at them and I said, "Well, there's nothing we can do." And I just started waving people, and they started driving over this material, and I was grabbing it and throwing it off the road, off to the side of the road, stacking it up. Fortunately, it wasn't anything that structurally was damaged, but it was 100 pieces of steel. As I was weaving and bobbing between trucks and cars and people honking and doing whatever they like to do when they're pissed at you, eventually got it all back and loaded up and got it back and made my delivery on time. Nobody knew anything different, but I just remember the look on that big truck driver's face when he looked at me, and I said, "Go ahead, drive right over the top of it." And that was one of those experiences that you come back with and say, "Hey, the job's never done until the truck's, until the material's loaded and put delivered to the proper customer." And that's kind of my work ethic that started out, to be the best at whatever it was. If I was sweeping a floor or loading a truck or delivering stuff, always had great personality, made that first impression. And that was who I was back in the day. And that carried through to today, actually.
Well, and I recall that you went back and reported to your boss what had gone down, or maybe they had already known by this point, and they were kind of hollering and screaming at you. And what did you do? You asked for and got a raise.
That's right. I forgot about that part. They had given me a truck that I said wasn't very reliable, and it had the proper safety attachments or sideboards. This would have never happened. And that's right. I did threaten to walk away, and they said, "Of course, Park." They said, "Well, you're the best truck driver we ever had. Sure, we can give you another $1 an hour."
Yeah, but that sort of chutzpah and customer service and can-do attitude is what got you literally over in Skellefteå, Sweden, which is, by the way, 400 miles up the Baltic coast from Stockholm. You're sitting in the office of a bunch of Swedes. You guys just kind of showed up. I mean, you're like still freshly out of high school. And I think you had Mark Stowe in tow. He was another friend of ours who went on to become an attorney, and I think he represents Swedish hockey players or something like that.
NHL players, yeah.
But you guys had the audacity to go in there and what? I'll let you finish up the rest of this story because it's where it has led to where you are today.
Well, it goes back to my truck driving days because the company I ended up running, which was a company called Brokk Inc. Solutions, at the time called Pneumatoring. I was a truck driver, expediter for this company. The owner of the company, Dave Ederer, was a multimillionaire, owned 13 different companies along the I-5 corridor, all the way down to Oregon up into northern Washington. Very successful University of Washington graduate, Price Waterhouse accountant. Worked in the business school at the University of Washington. Very well recognized guy. As a truck driver, somehow, some way, when he would come in, I'd always go in and talk to him, and his wife would come in and do the books, and randomly, just have this conversation. But he could see something in me, and I knew he could sense that. I left the company because they decided to change. They sold it and went on to something. I left, and about 10 months later, I got a phone call from Dave, and he said, "I want you to come in." Now, I'm working construction now at this point. And, of course, he sets me down, and he says, I go, "Dave, what's going on?" I'm still on my construction stuff, filthy, dirty, been in a ditch basically all day. And he said, he asked me, "Hey, Mike, would you be interested in running one of my companies?" And I'm like, my dream has come true. This is what I've always wanted to do, run a small company. And I knew the company because it was part of this metal fab company we were in called Pneumatoring, Brokk Inc. Solutions now. But we began to barter. I asked him how much. He said, "Well, I'll pay you $24 a year." And I said, "No, geez, Dave, that's not enough." And we went back and forth. In the back of my mind, I'm saying, take it. So I finally got him up to a price that I felt I was comfortable with. And literally, I started the job on the 5th of October, 1987. My first day of work, actually, after my training session, was October 1987. For those of you who are in the investment sector of the business, that was Black Monday. My first day was Black Monday. Huh. And I remember trying to call Dave that day, who Dave, I'm sure, had millions of dollars invested, trying to call him because I couldn't find a key to open a cabinet. And finally, he called me back about 8 o'clock that night and said, "Mike, what do you need?" I said, "I couldn't find the key." And he said, "Well, I don't know, Mike, you've been listening to the radio or listening to the news?" And so here's the guy losing millions of dollars probably that day, and I'm worried about a little key. So that was my first kickoff day. Then developing this company that we built went from $300,000 up to about $2 million in about a year and a half, 2 years, purely economy-based. It wasn't all about me. But we turned this thing around, and one day I kept, as I was traveling, I think I was somewhere in Korea or Malaysia or something, I kept seeing this little yellow robot machine. And I had a friend. I found out it was made in Sweden. I had a friend of mine, Mark Stowe, as you mentioned earlier, who was looking for hockey players in Sweden. And I said, "Hey, Mark, next time you go to Stockholm, would you run up north, up to Skellefteå, and check into this company? It's called Brokk." He said, "Sure, I'm going to be up that way anyway, scouting some kids, so sure." So he did. Went in, and I gave him some information. They presented it. And within a week, I got a call back. I had a visitor from Sweden come in, check us out in March. And then in August, I flew back with a couple of my buddies who happened to be traveling through Europe. So I thought, well, I'll bring one of my best friends, Paul Herrick, and along with my attorney, representative, my friend Mark Stowe. So we're sitting in a conference table with 3 of my high school buddies, sitting in front of 10 guys, trying to tell them why we were going to be the best distributor of their product in the United States and Canada. I'm 27. I think I'm probably 30 years old, maybe 29. No big deal, but it was quite an experience, navigating through this for 3 days with your two of your best buddies. But man, having your friends next to, after the meeting, I could go back and say, hey, how'd I do? And, they were truly hardcore critiquers. I mean, they had nothing to lose. So the next day I got a little better. And then by the third day, we closed the deal out. We ended up getting being able to represent the company in the U.S. and Canada. And that was in 1990. And took that company, hired a few guys that were very capable, and that we just took off. I mean, that turned into what it is today, $25 million a year company. So,
and I mean, it's amazing because I keep thinking back to that day when you lost that load of metal sheets in downtown Seattle. But what it demonstrated in your character of can do, get it done, going back, having the chutzpah to then ask for a raise, and how this all plays out in what you've done over the course of now, a 30-year career with that organization. And you guys have built it not only North American, but South American sales. You guys handle it from pole to pole, basically, and have done just an amazing job with it. Now, I've seen you in action when you are sharing the Brokk story with people. And this, of course, podcast is all about understanding stories and not getting caught up on the technology and the and the features and benefits.
Correct.
Can you share with us a little bit about how do you go about selling and kind of describe what this is for viewers? Now, you can go to the show notes and we'll have a Brokk there for you, but it's quite a remarkable piece of remote-controlled demolition equipment. But tell us how you go about selling it.
Well, it's a high-cost machine. You're looking at our smallest machine being $100,000 and our largest being almost $500,000. So you're in a very, what I call thin air. You're above that 26,000 foot level. And so you got to be, you got to be able to ferret out very quick the questions and qualify your customers out of the chute. And the key for us is that once you ask, 3 or 4 of those key questions, you've got a candidate. And of course, they're always asking me questions, but I never really answer. I'm usually returning that question with another question back to them, because I've learned that selling is about controlling the conversation and controlling the motion of the deal. You're the expert on the product. Stay the expert, move that direction, and always be asking questions that are basically pointing out the features and the benefits. And the machine itself it's a robotic. It's essentially a mini excavator style machine. So it looks like an excavator on tracks, but it's remotely controlled. So you're not sitting in the machine. Therefore, you can kind of afford to be a cowboy. I mean, we hang our machines off of cranes, we put them in places, and our main focus is confined space demolition, which is, it's an art. It's something where you'd have to do it manually, but with our machine, we can come in and replace 5 or 6 guys. So.
Well, and really high and very dangerous locations too. You guys do a lot of work in power plants in Fukushima. Did I say that right?
Yeah,
when
that's
that
correct.
power plant blew up, you guys were in there with the Brokk equipment, mucking that place out.
World Trade Center. I mean, we were, first responders. We had our machines down in there within about 48 hours. Not ours, but our contractors. We had 11 to 12 machines down in the subway canals, and they're clearing up and kind of investigating. Just finding people looking for things, stabilizing areas. So we get into some extremely interesting projects, which to me, that's what gets me up every day. It's really not the product. It's like if I was selling a Ferrari, I'd look at it and it'd be fun as heck for the first year. But after a while, it would be, that's just a Ferrari. I mean, and that's kind of where I'm at with the machine. It's more about, for me, it's about building somebody's business, finding out the applications and helping them build a business and a profit center. And so I'm always concentrating on what is the customer trying to get out of this? If they're just trying to solve a problem, typically I'll probably turn them into maybe a customer who already owns a machine. But I'm looking for entrepreneurs, guys that are trying to change the way they do their business. I'm looking for guys that are wanting to separate themselves from the herd. And they're hard to find, and you have to ask appropriate questions, and you got to pull them into this business and get them to believe in what it is that we're doing. Extremely expensive product, but the value of what it does and the money these guys can make with the machine is obviously the return on investment is where I'm going to lead everybody. I don't get too much into the buzzers and whistles on our machine. I have an after sales department that's brilliant, and I utilize them. If they've got technical questions, those are the guys I'm going to have them go to.
So you're selling to a contractor's dream of really building a business, and this is simply a vehicle to allow them to build the business of their dreams. You're not leading with the features and benefits. You're leading with, and I've seen you in action doing this, of here, Ray, here's, where you can take your excavation business or your demolition business. You've got a bunch of guys on hammers right now with this piece of equipment. You can come in, you can, do the productivity of 10 guys with one guy standing out of harm's way running this thing, and then you demonstrate the return on that investment. So you're not selling Brokk equipment, you're selling a business story.
Correct. I mean, and what I'm doing is I'm listening to their story, and their story is always, I need to reduce my labor. I can't find guys to do this work anymore, Mike. I want to get guys off of scaffolds and ladders. I don't want my guys being in this position. I can't find people that I can trust. The craftsmen aren't out there anymore. It's becoming harder in the construction field, and you'll hear this from everybody in the construction field. I can't find welders. I can't find pipe fitters. I can't find electricians, plumbers. I can't find these people, iron workers, crane operators. So, I mean, the idea that our model of 40 years of doing Brokk business is finally becoming a component within the industry. It's always been kind of an outsider, risk-taking, entrepreneurial product line, but it's becoming more mainstream as we're seeing this reduction of skilled labor that it just isn't available. And it's okay, but now I've got this robotic machine. We've got all these kids coming out that are video geniuses that can take a control of our machine, because it's basically two joysticks and a box, and it's all electronic, radio controlled, and these guys within 15 minutes of instruction get it. So we've got the right people. It's just getting the contractors to say, okay, it's time for us to invest in this kind of thinking, and it's coming. I mean, it's finally here, and we're seeing a lot of other companies starting to do the same thing that we're doing. Making their machines a little bit more user friendly, or maybe even automated and robotic controls. So the idea is getting these customers to understand that this is a different method. This is a method that not only is going to reduce your time of labor, it's going to be far more productive. It's going to be safer, and essentially reduce your liability, because insurance is another issue that's getting so expensive. If I have 6 guys on the job as opposed to 1, my liability has been reduced considerably.
Mm-hmm. So to get them into the Brokk story, you guys have to really own it first, and your sales guys out there. Now, I know you haven't spent necessarily a lot of time on a Brokk, but you really understand it from that business standpoint. So if someone has a question about the actual operation, you bring in some of your team to take care of that. Talk about how you guys and how you've been able to get your sales team to truly own that Brokk story so that they're able to go out and share it with others.
Well, part of it is, the history, the story behind our product. We have a lot of case stories, and of course, as you well know, Park, your company, Park & Co., did a great deal of helping us in our marketing approach. A lot of collateral material we're still using. A lot of case stories. We utilize our existing customers as well, so that they can, peer-to-peer. I got an existing customer that I know that's in Cleveland that could help me with my guy in Washington, D.C. They're the same type of contractor, and that guy in Cleveland had to go through the same pain that this guy in D.C. is doing. So we have so much history and so much information of those job stories to get those guys to come together. I try to tell my sales force, direct the sale. Make sure you're telling them what we know. Don't ask them. Don't let them tell you what they're using the machine for. Tell them what we think the machine can be used for in their applications. I want to hear. I'm asking questions about their company. I'm asking them how long they've been around, how they've been doing it, and then we start to talk about what the product can do for them. And then I always question them by saying, I want you to get your crew together, your key guys, your estimators, your superintendents, whatever, and sit down, and I want you to think about the 10 or 15 jobs that you've already done that this machine could have been utilized. And then I want you to start thinking about what jobs do you have coming up that you could use this technology and apply it towards. And once they kind of go through that process and they see it, they start to think, oh, we could have used that on the First Avenue job. We could have used that on the South Side or whatever. And I get them I get a conference call, and we start talking about projects and things that they could have utilized the machine for. And eventually, the machine just becomes part of who they are. They start to realize this is something we need. Of course, the cost is prohibitive for a lot of people. We do have other ways of getting machines on the job, whether it be our service fleet of rental machines or our existing customers. But getting the machine in their hands and doing a job, that's the sale. And that's where my after sales department really shines.
But you make your story their story. You tell it such that they're able to adopt it and fold it into their past stories of, man, I could have used that here and here and here. And maybe we could have gotten through this faster, or we didn't have to risk that one guy's neck had we had this machine. Oh, by the way, some future stories, projects coming up I could plug it into. So it's that real important, transferring your story to their story. We did work with you, I don't know, when was that? Almost 10 years ago, did branding, and I'll never forget. And you and I got a chance to go out to Skellefteå together, spent a week out there working with the Swedes. So much fun. And we created this one graphic of this remote control, the Brokk machine, about the size of a Volkswagen. Picture that. And it has all these different attachments you can put on it, from scrabblers to crunchers to cutters to hammers to all the stuff. So we had all these different arms coming out of it, almost like an octopus, and each arm had a different hammer, different demolition tool on it. And we said, your Swedish army knife.
Correct.
Because it could do so much. And I remember showing that, pulling that ad out there, and the Swedish engineers, who are very straightforward, and they looked at that and they go, but it's not built that way. It only has one arm. It doesn't have 6 arms. And we're like, no, we're just trying to communicate all the variety, all the utility you can get out of this thing. And I remember them being just kind of dumbstruck, and it just cracked me up. It was that very rational, engineer mind that builds these incredible pieces of equipment, but then they got to turn it over to an American to bring story to it. I mean, I had that same experience working at Quorum that was owned by Chinese National, and he told me that Raymond Hung, who owned the place, said, I asked him why he was selling out of North Phoenix when he was building this stuff in Hong Kong, and he said no one can out-engineer a Chinaman, and no one can out-market an American. And I just thought that was so funny, because I saw that exact same attitude when we were out there in Skellefteå that time. But we had so much fun with your brand marketing around that and bringing some fanciful storytelling to it. It really had a great impact on your sales. And with that, I want to go back to where we started from. A lot of people have a hard time digging up stories, and they're trying to maybe manufacture them to work within their brand storytelling, and they're uncomfortable, or it's a little bit like a round peg in a square hole. You had talked about using your friendships and your adventures and how those help feed the stories that you use in sales. Can you elaborate on that a little bit? Maybe give us an example or two?
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously we all go through life with mentors and people who have either tore us down or built us up. You can use, those tear downs as a positive way of saying, I'll never treat people like that, or I'll never operate that way. Then you have mentors that, lead you and make you think and broaden your scope and your perspective. I mean, we all have that. For me, I look at teachers, I look at coaches. Sports was a huge thing for me. That's how I met you, Park. It's how I met most of my high school buddies, through baseball. And to this day, we still gather and talk about the good old days, but at the same time, creating stories that, from yesterday. It's just that type of thing. But for me, friendship, and the competitiveness that I went through with you guys growing up. I mean, we had engineers, we had school teachers, doctors, communications guys like you, musicians. We had all these people that were, going in a direction, and I learned so much just hanging around my friends and discussing, methods. And I think a lot of our mischief that we got into was creative, extremely creative. We weren't violent. We didn't break things, not too many things.
We did
But
burn
we
down a
went out.
house once.
Yeah, we did do that, but that was purely accidental. I don't think we had anything to do with it.
No, that's true.
So I look at it as, the things that we were able to do at an early age. And I think we grew up in a pretty good time. There wasn't a lot of things going on. There wasn't, the Vietnam War was over, and it was all about play. There wasn't a lot of stress out there. It was more about going out, having a good time, finishing your studies, playing sports, and then finding stuff to do. And we were so creative in so many different ways. And we learned through those day-to-day experiences, just being kids, and watching my friends and how they reacted to things. And I utilized those skills, even my baseball days, of teamwork and understanding, failure and success. And to me, it all built a really strong case for what I would say is just the common sense I bring to the table. I mean, I think in a business market, if you make a good first impression, you have polite manners, and you got common sense, sales is a great place to go. If you can do those three things, and through the friendship and being put in situations where we had to cover each other or take care of one another or pick somebody up or pick them up when they're down, and then also to carry through when we were successful and we could celebrate. We learned that we were very good at celebrating, and I think a lot of people don't do enough of that. But we were able to really sit back after we had done something of creative character, and then we would sit down and we remember how many times we would rehash something and tell that story over and over and over again, and we polished every story. And when we would sit around the campfire with people we didn't know, and we'd start telling stories, and people would just stop and just listen, because we were like a comedy team in some respects. And so learning timing and learning when to speak and when to listen, and thinking ahead of where the conversation is going. You guys were so fast that if I made a mistake, I was buried for at least 10 minutes, and I'd have to dig myself out of it again. So we were pretty much, smart asses. But learning that process and getting so quick, I carry that right now because I'm quick on my feet, because I don't want anybody to knock me off my pedestal, because once you start building a story, you got to finish it, and it's got to be good at the end. It can't just fall flat, and they do once in a while, but same thing in sales. I mean, I'm building that story, and I'm building it up to a crescendo of success and follow-up and whatever has to be done. So I think growing up in the competitive mode that we did with each other, trying to out-funny each other, was really a huge success for me. Thank goodness I was able to have that kind of friendship, because I didn't have a college background. I was going nowhere in that respect. But you guys never ever let that be a judgment towards me. I'd be around your family and your friends, and what are you doing, Mike? Well, I'm working here. Oh, okay. You're not going to school? No. And oh, okay. But that didn't stop you guys from saying, "Oh no, don't worry about Smoke. He's got it figured out." I mean, I had good friends that really cared about me, and that was a big boost. And to this day, I'm helping people that are kind of in the same situation I'm in, growing up, and helping them realize, hey, you don't have to be a genius. You just have to work hard. 80% of it's showing up, and if you pay attention and you listen, you can learn, and you can get places in this world with a good personality and that first impression and just good common sense in making decisions. And eventually, you get to a point where you can actually start anticipating what your boss needs, and you become a valued employee, and then you can go someplace. I tell my nieces and nephews all the time, Park, hey, when all else fails, go to sales, because that's always, that's where the money is, in my opinion.
It's worked for you. I mean, you started with nothing out there in Monroe, Washington. You guys built a $25 million operation and still leading the world in sales of remote-controlled demolition equipment. And I think a lot of that does come from we were a tough audience on each other growing up through high school. And I remember a lot of times at our parties or whatever, people would comment, Jesus, you guys are smart asses, or you're tough on each other. But it was our way to kind of try to, I think, continue to one-up each other in our tale telling and polishing of those stories. And I know it's been very effective for you. And I've used a lot that I've learned throughout the years in my communications work from you guys. And not only the stuff that we have experienced, but then the stories of how those were reshaped and retold so that other people could own those adventures too. I mean, great fun. Mike, we need to take a quick break here for some of our amazing sponsor stories. And when we come back, I want for you to share the 7 hockey stick story and how that has impacted what you have done there with Brokk in growing it to where it is today. So we're going to be back with Mike Martin, head of sales of Brokk North America, right after these messages. Hey, if you like what you're hearing here on Business of Story, then you are going to love Definitive, the email from Convince and Convert that many marketers say is the most useful resource around. Each day, the team at Convince and Convert picks a topic and sends you the 3 best resources ever created about that topic. It's topical, it's timely, it's useful, so go to definitivedigest.com and subscribe for free right now. Hey, I've got a question for you. What's the best call to action button color on your website? Yeah, you probably didn't see that one coming, did you? Well, what's the best shape and sizes of your CTA buttons? And what copy gets more clicks? You know, these questions have interrupted my sleep patterns for weeks now, until I downloaded a helpful new email marketing guide from Emma called Why We Click, the Psychology Behind a Great Call to Action. You'll learn how applying just a little bit of brain science can transform your CTA buttons into small but mighty conversion powerhouses. It covers the button color, copy, and placement that helps skyrocket click rates. Check it out at myemma.com/click. You know, Emma helps marketers everywhere send smart, stylish email newsletters, promotions, and automated campaigns, and to help us all rest a little easier knowing our email marketing is doing its job. So check out their new publication at myemma.com/click. You, like all business leaders and communicators, have an important brand story to tell, but it's probably not being heard. There's just too much competition for our attention, unless, of course, you tell a better story. For over a year now, I have connected you with more than 50 international story artists through this podcast to help you craft your ideal brand story for the growth of your enterprise and your people. Did you know I'm also available to you for speaking engagements, brand and leadership story workshops, even for one-on-one Skype or telephone brand story strategy consults? Plus, you can begin clarifying your brand story right now by downloading the interactive DIY workbook at businessofstory.com. You see, your sales don't have to be comedies or tragedies. You can make them epic by clarifying your brand story and connecting with audiences and customers like never before. So download your workbook today at businessofstory.com. And if you're not 100% satisfied, I'll happily refund your money. And one last thought. Just remember, the most potent story you ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a good one, my friends. Story on. Welcome back to Business of Story, and our guest today and my great friend, Mike Smoke Martin from Seattle, Washington, actually more appropriate, Monroe, Washington, a gentleman I grew up with, really got to know in high school, a guy that we've had many capers, have survived a couple crashes, have lived a few of our lives, our cat lives with each other, but have all those adventures and stories have led to where we both are today, me in the communications world and Mike heading up operations for Brokk Inc. And now, again, this is a company that he went over with a friend of ours to Skellefteå, Sweden, a couple friends of ours, and talked them into giving him their North American sales. And he built it from nothing out in, again, Monroe, Washington, which is an outskirts, a small rural town outside of Seattle, into a $25 million operation with sales around the world, primarily, though, focused on South America to North America. And he's done it through his wit, his wisdom, his ability to tell stories, and his experiences from the past that he uses to connect with his customers now so that he can share the Brokk story and get them to make it their own story. So with that, Mike, you got to tell the 7 hockey stick story, and how did that impact your negotiation ability?
Well, first of all, I had a good partner. His name was Park Howell. That always helps. Got to have a partner in crime. But I can remember getting up that day. It was a cold, cold winter day, and you guys had that pond in the backyard, and somebody said, hey, it'd be kind of fun if we could go check out, see if the ice was thick enough, which in Seattle, that's a rarity. But sure enough, we went out there and checked it. We jumped on it. Yep, we can play hockey on this. Well, in order to play hockey, you need a couple things. Really important. You need a puck and you need sticks, hockey sticks. So we went into the garage. I can remember going in the garage and looking up in the rafters and counting, I think maybe 2 sticks. Okay. Somebody had obviously, used the sticks for other things. Who knows what? They've probably been up there for years.
They just didn't get a lot of use, yeah.
Yeah, right. And could have been discarded or just put somewhere else. And so we had about 8 of us there. Had been up that whole night playing pool and then got up, and here we are on a Sunday morning. Or a Saturday morning, whatever it was. But I can remember the angst within the group of, oh man, we got pond, we got ice, we don't have hockey sticks. And I remember you looking at me and goes, hey, isn't there a hockey supply store in Linwood, which is 30 minutes away?
The Snow King Ice Arena.
Snow King, exactly. I said, yeah, I think there is. Well, let's go get some. So, being naive and being who we are, it's like, well, let's round up. Hey, guys, got any cash? So next thing you know, I think we ended up with what? I think $8, was it?
Yeah, maybe.
$9. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So we got $9, and we counted. We needed 7 hockey sticks, and the guys looked at us. The other 6 looked at you and I and said, "There's no way you're going to get those hockey sticks." And Park and I, that's never been in our vocabulary. That's not the way we roll. It's like, you want to bet? We're coming back with 6. We got it. We're going to do this. And we got in the car and we started driving. And I can remember going, geez, Park, really, how are we going to get the 7 sticks for? I think we had $8 to $9 max.
Yeah.
So we get in. So that didn't stop us. We went for our 30-minute drive. Went to the hockey rink. Fortunately, it was open. Went inside. Went into their pro shop. There was a guy behind the counter, and we said, hey, you guys got like any broken sticks or, sticks you're getting ready to discard that we could fix? Or he's looking at us like, what for? I said, well, we got a hockey game that we're trying to organize in Woodinville, and hey, what can we do for us? Well, how much do you guys have? I said, well, we got, $9. He goes, oh, I don't know. And he starts pulling out stuff, and he goes, here, you can have these 2. I said, dude, we need 7. We need 5 more. We need 7 of these.
And I think all of his hockey sticks started at like $14 a piece.
Oh,
so
easy.
Like, you wasted my time.
Yeah, easy. Yeah. So he did find some, used stuff, and he went in the back room and he dug it all out. And he comes out and he says, okay, I'm going to charge you $1.25 a piece or something like that. Okay, so he brings it all up, and all of a sudden he goes, well, all I have is $9, and it was like $10 and in a little bit of change. And he looks at us, and I went out in the car. I remember going out in the car and going through the floorboards, and we found another 35, 45 cents. We went back in, and I laid it on the counter. I said, "It's all I got." And he reached into his wallet. I remember him pulling out $1, putting it on the counter, and saying, "You guys get the hell out of here."
Because we didn't even have enough money for the tax.
No, the tax, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, and it's like $1.50 for tax. We go, well, we don't even have enough to pay for him, let alone the tax. So we reached in his pocket, and he paid the tax for us and told us to get the hell out. And we left with 7 hockey sticks.
It has 7 hockey sticks, and I remember driving back to the happy age, back to your house, and here's all the guys all just vegged out watching football or whatever, just sitting there like that. We come in and we go, "You guys ready? What? Ready for what? Let's go play some hockey." They go, "No way." You come rolling in behind with 7 sticks, and they just went, "Get out of here. There's no way you could have done that." And right then, that just proved to me, from a standpoint of our friendship and of you take challenges as they come, and you just hope that, your story, the guy feels so sorry for you. If you lay it down properly, here's a guy selling hockey gear, and I got 2 guys that want to play hockey. Okay, and he did everything he could do to get us those sticks so we could go out and do something that I know this guy wanted us to do, and he helped us in a way that probably he's forgotten about it, but you and I have never forgotten about it. We've always talked about one day putting a company together and calling it 7 Sticks. Maybe a winery over in when we get our winery going over in Chelan Park or Manson, we're going to name it 7 Sticks, but that's the kind of thinking that just embellishes just who we are and what people can actually accomplish. And I think ignorance is one of the most important things when it comes to selling. I was far more successful back in the day just because I didn't know better. I was ignorant. And I didn't know what no meant. And now, as I've gotten more intelligent, I tend to back away a little bit easier. And I shouldn't. But just not knowing what you're up against and the odds, and not being afraid because you just don't know any better, I think that was something. And I try to relive that. I try to think of myself as being somebody that, hey, don't be afraid of this challenge. Yes, it's a stretch. A lot of people are telling you it can't be done. It's never going to happen, Mike. Forget about it. And I'm preparing right now to launch. I've got 3 new products that I'm getting ready to launch, and I'm right in the middle of it. I don't want to go into detail about that, Park, but it's coming. And again, these are all things that people probably will say, "Why are you even doing that? That's crazy." But I know, there's a certain amount of ignorance going on, and why not?
Ignorance is bliss.
Yep.
Follow your bliss. And the one thing from that story that I've always taken away is you and I, when we went out there, never doubted that we were going to leave with 7 hockey sticks. So that was the story that we just had in our mind, and it just never occurred to us that we had nowhere near the money to afford that. We just knew it was going to happen one way or the other. It was just sheer belief in our story. So tell us one of the best stories, one of your go-to stories about Brokk, and maybe how it was inspired by your past life or earlier adventures.
Well, I've got a couple of funny stories, but I think that one of my favorite stories was, it's really not a sales story, more of a mistake that happened that was brilliant. But we had a fellow. Matter of fact, I'm going to his retirement party in Florida here next month. A guy named Ron Daly, a large concrete cutter, very good customer of mine. Got to know him. Super nice guy. Very, very entrepreneurial. I would always, anytime I had something new or interesting, I'd always take it to Ron, because he'd see the value, and he'd buy it, and he'd make it part of his company, and I could utilize Ron for many, many years. He was just a wonderful guy to deal with, and now he's turned his company over to his son. They have 13 stores throughout the Southeast. It's a very successful, self-insured, demolition / concrete cutting company. So I'm going to be very honored to be invited to go to that particular event next month. But Ron bought a Brokk 90. This is probably 2002 or something like that, and we've got it into New York because it comes on a boat. It's in a big box, like a big large wood box crate, and we shipped it down to Ron. And Ron called me and says, "Hey, Mike, I got the 90, and if you could get one of your technicians to come down, I want to do a startup." So I said, "Sure. Well, next week we'll come down." Okay, great. About 3 days goes by, and he calls me up, and Ron had this kind of funny he's from Tennessee. He said, Mike, we got a problem here, Mike. That Brokk 90 you sent me, Mike, it's not a Brokk. I open up the crate, Mike, it's a piano. I said, "What?" He goes, Mike, I'm telling you, I know what an upright piano looks like. It's not a Brokk. It's a piano. So somehow, some way, some woman probably, from for some religious school somewhere, ordered a piano for her classroom, and now she's got a Brokk 90 in a crate sitting in her area, and Ron's got a piano. So eventually, we figured out where everything was, and we got his Brokk 90 back in time, and the piano was shipped back. So those are kind of the crazy stories that come about when you're in the business. But Ron was one of those guys that I could throw stuff at him, and he would make things happen just beautifully for us, and I could utilize him to have my customers call. Other things that I think I've done is, for instance, I had a customer call me in Pittsburgh, and they wanted to close a deal. Brokk 250. This is late 80s. Late 90s. And he called me up. He's from Pittsburgh. He's still a customer to this day. And he said, Mike, we're ready to go on this Brokk 250, but, we'd like you to fly in and, have a meeting. Well, I'm thinking, wait a minute. Now, if I fly to Pittsburgh, go in there, they're going to have 7 or 8 guys sitting in this room, maybe 4, whatever. There's really nothing to do. I've already demonstrated the machine. We've already negotiated the price. At least I understood that. Now, why would he have me fly back there? Just, I'm just a guy with brochures. There's nothing I can do. So I said, I felt, well, I know what he's going to do. They're going to try to negotiate with me. They're going to try to beat me up. So I called the guy back up. I said, I'll tell you what. I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I think it was John. So I said, John, how about this? He said, look, it's going to cost me 2 days of travel. It's going to cost me at least $3,000 to come there and come back. How about we just do this? I just give you a $3,000 discount, and we call it good. But I need you to sign that document and send it over to me. And he did. And at the end of the conversation, he says, Mike, in all the years I've been buying equipment, I've never, ever had anybody ever do that, but I understand it. So I never was conventional. I always thought of things of ways. I really didn't have the time. I couldn't afford the time. And I know getting in the room, I probably would have spent $3,000, and then I would have had to probably throw in some spare parts or something else, because you'd never walk out without them feeling like they've got something from you. So that was a lesson early on that I learned, is just to get things and be creative and think outside the box and offer them something. Of course, money always talks, but it saved me a tremendous amount of time, and also, at the end of the day, got the deal signed, shipped the machine, and got paid.
So for our listeners, Mike, what are a couple, 3 tips that you would share from, selling remote control demolition equipment literally around the world, and how you have used story to make that happen? What are some tips that people should be thinking about when they're crafting and telling their stories?
I think one of the number one most important word I ever learned, especially when I was doing international sales, was to say no. I think as sales guys, especially new salespeople, you're working so hard to please the client, and they keep asking for something, and you keep saying, yeah, we can do that. Yeah, we can make that. Yes, we can do it. And by saying no, that was my first step of understanding that I need to be the one directing the sale, which leads me to my second thing. I think directing the sale, and that is, you got to have at least 5 or 6 key questions that you always consistently go to. And I changed my shtick a lot. I mean, and I forget things that actually worked for me in the past, and then something triggers it, and I remember, oh, that was always a good way to go in conversation, in storytelling. And then I go and I reinvent, or I bring that back into my shtick that I use, when I'm on the phone. I sell everything on the phone, by the way. I don't do a lot of traveling, and it's a unique circumstances. It's just a talent that I have when I'm talking to people. I do so much better on the phone than I do face to face.
And what are the kind of 5 or 6 questions? Can you give us a couple examples of those?
Yeah, I mean, essentially, what are you using? What do you want? What are you using the machine for? How are you doing it now? What is not working for you? Why are you calling it based on what you're doing now? What you think our machine does? Why are you calling? What's the story behind? Have you seen the machine operate before? What are some of your concerns about this project? what type of work are you guys doing? Are you doing a lot of confined space? Are you doing interior work? Our machines are electric driven, so that helps them on an interior demolition project, or what we call selective demolition.
Mm-hmm.
So you kind of categorize the customer, and you get it's easy for me within about 5 minutes. I know kind of the profile. Then we start talking about the types of jobs that they have and the types of jobs that they used to have, or they did have, they've done, completed. Start to give me an idea. Of course, right away with the access of the web, I can get on as I'm talking to them and check out their website, kind of, and see some things. And I might even say, hey, I'm on your website. I noticed that you guys are doing a lot of this type of work. That's right up our alley. Here's why. And so the more I know about the customer, because I'm usually getting calls that are coming in. I do cold calling, which I can prepare prior to the call, who my customer is. I already know who they are. I've done the research, but a lot of my calls are just random. They just come in and I have to introduce myself and who I am. And then, I go through it. And they always want to talk price. I never talk price. I only talk price, at the end of the conversation, or I'll say, I'll send you our price list. I don't want to discourage them. I want to build the value of the product, and then we can talk about price. And so those are the simple things.
Yeah, number one is say no. Make sure that you are directing that sale, having the questions ready for you. And then do you have a final tip there of these three?
Well, develop a rapport. Compliment them. Tell them that I'm really happy that you're thinking of going in this direction, and getting them to kind of embrace their entrepreneurship and basically say, you're a rare bird. You are not somebody. There's hundreds of people that call, or like I always say, you go to a trade show, 10 guys will walk by our booth and one guy will stop out of that 10. And he'll ask questions and he'll understand that the other 9 guys go over to, John Deere and Caterpillar, and they're all looking around the new excavator that's got air conditioning and a CD player and really doesn't do anything more than the one they've got in their yard right now. But that one guy will stop and he'll see it. So I'm always trying to really hype up that entrepreneurial spirit and compliment my customer that they are thinking about doing something different than the rest of either their competitors or anybody in the area that they work in, and getting them to kind of embrace this excitement that I feel like that's my most fun thing to do, is to get these guys into this business and build this franchise, because there's not many products out there that can do what our machine does when it comes to building a profit center.
And it goes back to building that business using Brokk as the vehicle to build the business. It's not all focused on the Brokk. It's just what the Brokk can do for them.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
And building that rapport, no differently that we built when we were kids, getting to understand each other. What's your weakness? What's your strength? And helping that customer define that. I want them to call me every time they have a new job that they don't know exactly how they could use the Brokk. Call me up. I want to work with you. I want to help you. I can help you put your, do your estimations. I can help you tell your production rates. I can tell you the kind of money you should be charging. And I'm here to help them build their business. Selling the product is secondary. It doesn't even, it's like a 15-second Yahoo, and then I'm on to my next deal. I'm not big, I don't really care who closes the deal. Getting an order is important because that's how our company functions, but that's once it's said and done, I'm already moving into the next deal, and I'm locked in. And a lot of guys spend a lot of time trying to pioneer. I'm more of a guy, like when I got somebody, I got 3 or 4 guys that are close, I'll spend every wake moment trying to figure out how I'm going to get those guys to buy the machine, close the deal. Close, and that's important. Not really, I don't care if I have 100 customers that are interested. I want 4 that are ready, and those are the guys I'm going to focus on. Then I'm going to build the next 4 or whatever. And I think a lot of times guys are chasing numbers. I've got 125 prospects. Yeah, but you haven't sold the machine this month. Do you have anybody that's close? Go. Focus on that, close that deal, whatever we got to do.
Yeah. Well, Mike, with that, we need to close the show, and I want to thank you so much for being here. It's just great fun and a great honor to have you with me. We are old pals from way back when, and it's just fun to have you on Business of Story and sharing your experiences.
Thanks, Park, and it's been an honor to be a friend of yours and watching you grow your business as well, and being a part of that and having somebody I can pick up the phone and throw ideas at. And because a lot of times I'm working on crazy road, and it's nice to have a partner walking down crazy road with you.
God knows we've been down that crazy road a few times, even back in the early days.
Yes, we have.
And off the cliff and into the lake and everything else.
Off of roofs, falling off of roofs and all kinds of fun stuff. Yeah.
Breaking necks, yeah. So it's what's made us what we are today, I guess. So anyways.
I would think so. and many more years to come, and
Absolutely.
many more stories, I'm sure.
Well, thanks, man. And I'd like to thank all of you that tuned in to this episode of Business of Story with another amazing story artist and Mike Martin. And if you like what you hear, please visit us on iTunes and give us a rating. Let your world know about what we're doing here at Business of Story, because our job is to help you expand your storytelling skills worldwide like Mike has done with Brokk. And of course, we have a number of different tools that you can use at businessofstory.com and an interactive workbook just waiting for you there to fill out to get your brand story straight and really, really own it. Because as I say, people will not buy into your story until you own it first. This workbook, I guarantee you, or your money back, will help you identify, dial in, and really understand who you are, what you are about, and how you can use this knowledge to not only grow your business, but grow your client's business. So please visit me at businessofstory.com for the tools just waiting there for you. And if you have an idea for the show or a guest for the show, please send me a note at park@businessofstory.com. So thank you for listening. Join us next week when we will have another brilliant story artist on the show, helping you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. So until then, have a wonderful life.
Thanks for tuning in to The Business of Story. Don't forget there are terrific free storytelling resources for you at thebusinessofstory.com, where you'll also find the complete show archive. The Business of Story is sponsored by Emma and by Convince and Convert, and is produced by Convince and Convert Media. Find more great shows like The Business of Story at marketingpodcasts.com, the first search engine for marketing podcasts. Podcast imaging by Audio Bag.